Security Council unanimously adopted a strong resolution with important mandatory measures: an arms embargo, a travel ban, and asset freezes for those responsible. European Union members of the Council worked hard to achieve an outcome that reflects the supreme urgency and severity of the situation. Accountability and justice are essential, and that's why I'm pleased that agreement was found in the resolution to refer the investigation of the ongoing crimes to the International Criminal Court. As the European Union, we will of course ensure swift implementation of the Security Council measures, and we're already working on restrictive measures that will come into force quickly. Of course, Mr. President, it's not just in Libya that we need to ensure basic human rights. I've made visits to countries across the Mediterranean where people are claiming their rights and insisting that the old ways of doing things simply won't do. I met with government officials, members of opposition parties, civil society organisations, women's groups and youth organisations. I went to Tunis, where I met groups that had not been allowed to meet in the same room before, and to Cairo, where I met the young people who'd been in Tahrir Square. My purpose was to listen, and this is what I heard. They said, "This is our country and it's our revolution. We want real change, and we want the system to recognise the significance of that change." And they said, "This is a beginning. We need to take time to get this right. We want genuine democracy, not just on the day that we cast our ballots, but in the weeks, months and years to follow. We want jobs, economic opportunity and social justice." Mr. President, we can and must salute the courage of people in the region for the peaceful and dignified way in which they have advanced their core demands. But we can and must do more. We have to offer our full support to do what the people of the region ask us to do. From a position of humility, knowing that our own histories are full of dark pages and our own path to deep democracy wasn't linear and wasn't easy, but with the conviction that in the ongoing transitions, full respect of human rights and fundamental freedoms is key. It's the only way to get sustainable security, to get justice, and to get prosperity. Mr. President, human rights, we often say, are universal. That is why all violations, wherever they take place, are our concern and must be addressed by this Council. And we know in countries that people's rights are at risk. In Iran, where we've seen a steep rise in executions. In Belarus, we are concerned at the number of political prisoners. In the Democratic Republic of Congo, where there are distressing reports of sexual violence, and other places besides. The European Union is also deeply concerned at the situation in the Middle East, including the occupied Palestinian territories. We are working hard to reach our long-standing aim, a negotiated solution leading to 2 states. Some of the achievements of this Council perhaps do not receive the attention that they deserve. Take the recent work on freedom of association, or the mechanism to promote the elimination of laws and practices that discriminate against women. Still, this Council has some way to go in living up to the mandate it was given by the General Assembly. And that's why we want a real substantive outcome of the review process now underway on the work of the Council. The test of success is simple. It's not just whether we pass resolutions or create new procedures, vital though they can be. These are the inputs. What truly matters are the outputs. Whether we make a difference on the ground, whether all the people are able to enjoy free speech in Libya, in Iran, in the Côte d'Ivoire, in Belarus, in Burma, Myanmar, the DPRK. Fair elections, the rule of law, equal rights, impartial administration. Mr. President, sometimes the European Union is accused of trying to export so-called European values to other countries. I reject that accusation. The rights to free speech, the freedom of assembly, justice and equality are not just European rights, they're universal rights. We must never fall into the trap of believing that people in other parts of the world are any less passionate about their rights too. Kofi Annan, in his 2005 report In Larger Freedom, said this: "Human rights are as fundamental to the poor as to the rich, and their protection is as important to the security and prosperity of the developed world as it is to that of the developing world." We are meeting today precisely because those rights inspire people in every part of the globe. What is true is that many countries lack the institutions able to defend and promote those rights. And that's why one of the great challenges facing us is to help countries build those institutions, to anchor and ensure full respect for fundamental rights and the rule of law. We are living through historic times, and it's easy to be dazzled by the promise of change. Just as important is where we go from here. So I want to look at the possible direction of travel. I believe we need to narrow the gap between the magnitude of the challenges facing us and, in a sense, the detail, the minutiae of our political debate, between the expectations of those who put us here and our ability to deliver, between great statements of universal principles and what happens to individual people and to their lives, between the calm of being here in Geneva and events that are just 2 hours' flight away. Mr. President, above everything, it's time to rise to the challenge. Thank you.
Thank you. I thank Her Excellency Baroness
Catherine Ashton, Baroness Ashton, the Foreign Affairs Policy Chief for the European Union, amongst a host of diplomats and politicians at the United Nations Human Rights Council meeting in Geneva. We are expecting Hillary Clinton within the next 20 minutes or so to stand up and make her point. Each one of those addressing the conference there, talking about events not just in Libya, but across Middle East and North Africa. And Catherine Ashton there saying, as she wrapped up her speech, it's easy to be dazzled by the events. We're living in historic times, but we've got to plan for the future. Well, that has yet to be done, but what about what's happening right now in Libya? Opponents of Colonel Gaddafi are worried that there will be a counterattack in AlJazeera. That's near the capital, Tripoli. They had fought and won control of their town, but we're getting reports here at AlJazeera that AlJazeera is still surrounded by troops loyal to Gaddafi. Lawrence Lee reports.
You'd be forgiven for thinking that if a town only half an hour from Tripoli is in the hands of protesters with tanks, then the end must surely be near. Yet the days drift by, momentum ebbs and flows, and for the time being, Gaddafi's regime has enough to avoid falling to the people's uprising. Given the routine way in which Gaddafi's armed forces have been switching allegiances over the last few days, one of the questions that keeps being raised is how are the Gaddafis maintaining a fighting force? Up until now, the chief spokesman for Gaddafi has been his son, Saif al-Islam. He has routinely accused the media of lying about the fighting. Maintaining Libya is entirely at peace with itself.
The point that you are hearing rumors, false reports, please take your camera tomorrow morning, even this night. Go to every city in Libya. Everything is calm, everything is peaceful.
And yet this has now emerged. The same man, semi-automatic in hand, exhorting people to fight for his father.
I'm here to raise your morale. They are spreading rumours that our police and security forces are joining the hooligans. It's not true. Today we'll show them that the police are siding with Libya. I'm bringing you reinforcements, resources, food, weapons, everything you need.
Discounting the irony that Saif al-Islam Gaddafi has warned about the prospects of civil war while seeming to arm a militia is the question of the extent of Gaddafi's regular military forces. This is the Bainin air base, said to be one of the most important in the country. The military here say they've joined the uprising.
The whole base responded to my call to join the People's Revolution. We have great staff. As military personnel, we want to be clear that this is not a military coup. We are not leading anything. This is a people's revolution led by the youth. Our role is to protect and support it. That's our main aim.
If Western Libya remains on a knife edge and will determine Gaddafi's fate, All the reports from the east suggest people trying to get on with life after Gaddafi anyway. The other big question is whether cities like Benghazi actually want to move on Tripoli, or whether they're happy to let Tripoli decide its own fate. Lawrence Lee, Al Jazeera.
Let's go to Huda Abdul Hamid, who's actually in Benghazi. The question posed by Lawrence there was whether the people of Benghazi, those who've been taking part in this uprising, actually want to get on with their lives in that city, or whether they're prepared to push on towards Tripoli. I know it's a difficult question to answer, but it's sort of trying to sum up the mood of the people there with that question. How would you say they're feeling?
Well, I think they do want to get back to a normal life. It's still very, very difficult. It's been nearly now 2 weeks, and I would say that the life is at a standstill here in Benghazi. They're trying their best. They're trying to open banks, make people sort of be able to resume any kind of life. But as you said also, many are very worried about what's happening in the West. They know that what happens here cannot be successful without the West actually also falling entirely in the hands of the opposition. They do want to help, but they also know that this is a very difficult situation, and they have to take care about this part of the country. Now, joining me is Hisham Hassan. He is the spokesperson for the International Red Cross. Hisham, welcome. How would you see the situation now here in Benghazi?
Well, as you say, the city is trying to cope, including the health structure. Hospitals, including nurses that have been present here, have fled in the past week because most of them are foreigners. Doctors and surgeons, the Libyan ones, have done an excellent job, but they are in dire need and a real need now of nurses. They are also in need of some health items, medical items. They are in need of certain specialties like neurosurgeons and other specialties as well. This goes for other hospitals, the 3 main hospitals of Benghazi that received the bulk of the 2,000 persons that have been injured in the past week.
Okay, obviously now most of the fighting is happening in the west of the country, in Tripoli. Are you able to have any access there?
So far, no. We have a team that is on standby on the Tunisian border. As soon as the security situation allows, we would go in, but we are very deeply concerned about the humanitarian situation in Benghazi and in Tripoli.
What's the main concern there now?
Well, on the border, our teams say that there are tens of thousands that have crossed the border to Tunisia, which means that there's a big need now for re-establishment of family links, for those people to contact their families. They are in need of sanitation, shelter, and all those kinds of things. In the city, we can imagine in Tripoli that the situation must not have been much different than what it is the case today, before in Benghazi as well. So we are very concerned, as I said before.
Okay, and one of the missions of the Red Cross is access to prisoners. Now, in this particular situation, there are prisoners on both sides. Have you been able to access any side?
We have not been present in Libya before. We never had an office here, but we would like, as soon as possible and as soon as the situation allows, to offer our services to visit those detainees and to follow the same modalities we apply in other countries, such as Tunisia, for example, Jordan and Lebanon.
Okay, thank you very much. I think, David, also the challenges, as Hisham just said, is that everything is really new in this country. The system was so centralized really around Muammar Gaddafi and his popular committees that everything needs to be started from scratch all over again. And for anyone, even the National Council that is trying to sort of give some sort of governance, it is really a new experience. And everybody is very much aware that the situation is not solved, that yes, here it's been liberated, but Gaddafi could come back, his forces could come back. They're reading what's happening in the other parts of the country, especially the reports about tanks heading towards Misrata or AlJazeera, as an effort of the Gaddafi government to retake the western parts before coming to the eastern parts.
Going to update you on the headline stories this hour. Egypt's public prosecutors now issued a travel ban for the former president Hosni Mubarak and his family, pending what they describe as further investigations. And he's ordered a freeze on the Mubarak's financial assets inside Egypt. Protesters in the Libyan city Benghazi are preparing to help people still fighting troops loyal to Muammar Gaddafi. These pictures appear to show Gaddafi's son safe, arming civilians to help them keep control of the capital, Tripoli. We're receiving reports that fighting is still going on in the city of Misrata. Tariq Youssef here from the Dubai School of Government. I suppose we were expecting something, talking about Egypt, from the prosecutor, but is the level of this more than we were expecting?